You are listening to The Underground Subway with host David Alston, a podcast dedicated to giving you the strategies to live a free and better life. Here is David Alston.
Hi, I'm David Alston, host of The Underground Subway. And I want to welcome you to a podcast that is dedicated to one thing, giving you the tools and strategies needed to live a better and more successful life. Listen, my friends, all of us are going through things, and all of us can live a better life. All of us have an opportunity to develop our skills, develop our relationships, develop our connections in order to live a better life. And when we do that, we will leave behind a legacy for our children and our children's children. That's why this podcast is dedicated to bringing you quality and qualified guests who will teach us, who will share with us their life experiences and expertise to allow us to live a better life. And so we interview the best of the best. We interview those who really know how to pull us out of a pit and send us to a better life. I'm excited about my guest for this edition of the Underground Subway. His name is Vinnie Potestivo. Vinnie Potestivo is an Emmy Award-winning media brand advisor, personal brand strategist, and content coach. He is also the creator of I Have a Podcast, curator of indie podcast platform ihaveapodcast.com, and the host of I Have a Podcast on TV. His passion to inspire talent, opportunities, and to impact has driven Vinnie and his team at VPE Talent to become well-trusted connectors who sell, develop, produce, launch, distribute, while amplifying some of the most impactful original series and talent brands in modern pop culture. As a television network talent executive at MTV Networks from 1998 to 2007, he pioneered the way talent and artists claim control of their narrative by making them hosts, stars, and even producers of their own hit series. Having launched some of the most successful talent brands in modern pop culture, Vinnie continues to develop talent and talent-led projects and is an active member of the National Academy of Television Arts and Sciences. Welcome to the Underground Subway, Vinnie Potestivo.
Thanks, David. Thanks for having me, man. Appreciate being here.
Well, thank you. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us. Well, Vinnie, let's get right into it. I'm excited about having you because, your bio is extensive. As we just read, it is amazing. So let's talk about it. Tell us, is there anything about you outside of the bio that we need to know about you?
How about there's nothing in the bio that you need to know about me?
Oh, wow.
Everything that's worthy of knowing is probably outside of that bio, which is actually a real shame. I should think about how I write that bio. But the bio is a bunch of work. It's a bunch of work success. It's all the things that make me a corporate viable option. It's why my accountant thinks you might like me.
Right.
But the truth is, I'm the oldest of six. I talk about my siblings a lot. I learned to storytell. I learned to edit information out of certain stories for younger family members, and I learned to embolden the truth to some of the older ones. And it really gave me a fabulous sort of gift of storytelling. Unfortunately, in the beginning, I was a horrible storyteller, and I believed everything that I told myself. There was no social media in the very beginning when I was a bad storyteller, but I learned that in empowering my story and taking myself out from being the victim, and not even making myself a hero, but just making myself, a more mutual voice, that it allowed me. Actually, that's really the secret. My secret wasn't my stories. I'm never the hero. It's always mutual. I'm always looking for collab. I'm always the guy. I'm always on the quest, the alchemist, always looking for to be surrounded by talent. And I built my career at MTV in the late 90s that way. And met some powerhouse talent that I'm still very close with, that I'm lucky to say we got to, grow our entire careers together over the last 20, 25 years together, first in TV, then on social media, then in podcasting and digital media, all alike. But it's been a great journey. It wasn't supposed to work out. I wasn't supposed to work in TV because I didn't know anybody. All the bad advice that I
Right,
was
right.
given. I made it work for me. So
Well, Vinny, let me ask you this. Myself, I have a story that
Mhm.
a personal true story about myself and my life. And the more I share it with people, the more they say, wow, you have got to get that story out to the world. It is a hallmark, lifetime story.
Wow.
As I shared it with, I recently, you talked about 10 to 12 people, and of the 12 people, 11 were females who almost broke into tears listening to it.
Wow.
I spoke to a gentleman the other day about it, and I'm leading up to a question for you, uh, who said your story is amazing and it would be a tremendous hit. He said, but the problem is you have to be careful because the industry is so dirty. How true is that? Is that true, or how true is it? Or can you talk to us about the industry?
um, I think that whenever you talk about money, I think that the dirty side in humanity comes out. So I don't want to blame it on the industry, but I think
Mm,
that especially in times like now where some people's revenue streams consist of saving money, some of it consists on earning money. So there's lots of different ways, right, to ultimately quote unquote make money. You can earn it and save it, you can earn it and have it work for you. Lots of sort of different ways to go about it. The truth of the matter is what I think what you're hinting at are rights, the IP rights,
right, right.
out of the gate, and maybe even what are some foolproof ways that you specifically could lean into your strength without feeling like you'd be robbed from it, right?
Right.
So I can hear that in your question because I can relate to that. I come up with shows that I don't care if you have my idea. Take my idea. You'll never get my cast. You'll
Okay.
never you'll never have the Osbournes. You'll never have Jessica Simpson and Nick Lachey. You'll never have gotten Ashton Kutcher. And on
Uh-huh.
Punk. Some of that is the alchemy of those is the alchemy of that success. So I really lean heavily on my relationships with people.
Okay.
That being said, to answer your question, so yes, it's dirty, it's scrupulous. By the way, you have to have um, documentation on ownership, and as there are more and more emerging platforms, those descriptions are evolving more and more. Like what used to be in perpetuity globally is now universal as opposed to global. Like the reach is large because I think the industry got so much bigger. But if you have a great story, it's about your life. If these things, and it's about something that no one can take away from you, i.e., your identity, your life, your story, your character. Um, for me, maybe, and again, not knowing all the details, but some of the general details about your backstory, an article, by the way, a well placed article is really all you need to have the intellectual property to be able to leverage
Hmm.
that article into a larger television project. Or it could even be a podcast episode, or very well, it could just be a podcast. It could be this podcast in and of itself that ultimately ends up getting leveraged into, a larger project or a story or something like that. But
Okay.
I would not be abashed at sharing your story if it was something that was about you personally.
Got you. Got you. So
Yeah.
you talked about connections and people that you've connected with over the years. Can you give us some example of some celebrities or people that you've discovered or worked with?
Yeah, I'll name drop. I'll
Yeah,
tell you what.
man. That was I didn't want to say that, but
Yeah, right. Wait, let me tell you some of the people who made my career. Let's put it
Okay.
that way,
All
right?
right.
Like Beyonce.
Okay.
Like, let me tell you what Beyonce did for me, by the way. I was a very, very junior casting associate at MTV. I was working remotely with the MTV Films crew, and I was called to run the casting session. MTV had decided to turn Carmen, the opera, into a hip opera, and we cast Beyonce in it. And I was the casting associate who got to run the session. And I mean, it was greatness personified. It was to see. It was crazy to see an ensemble talent like Beyonce back then. If you think about it, right? An ensemble. It was really on MTV her first time having a solo feature moment that didn't have anything to do with the band, which I don't like bringing up because then sometimes I get blamed for Destiny's Child. But that's all. That's all Matthew knows. I'll put it on Matthew out there. But what Beyonce taught me was she took this opportunity, this acting opportunity on MTV, something that wasn't necessarily even in her public facing strategy. And she turned it into an opportunity to learn character development. And I've read articles, I've seen conversations where she talks about the fact that she learned character development while filming Hip Opera. And the character she developed was Sasha Fierce. And that character of Sasha Fierce is who we know as Beyonce, the fierce version of Beyonce, when she steps into her greatness and also can step out of it as well with humility and comfort and no excuse to be or not to be whoever she wants to be, depending on like the vibe, the feel, the energy. And I love where she took that opportunity to be an actress and to learn the craft was to develop a character so close to herself that she could even step into her shoes. And that was just like a major life moment. Also, bringing Nick Cannon to MTV was pretty cool. I got to, originally he was supposed to replace Carson on TRL. Carson Daly hosted a show called Total Request Live a long time ago on MTV. We thought this Nickelodeon comedian would be the perfect. He could host live TV, and maybe we thought it would turn into something more comedic. But he had bigger plans for comedy, and he pitched us Wild 'N Out, and Wild 'N Out we passed on Wild 'N Out, and it was like probably November, and he went away on holiday break, and he invested some money into a tape that we already passed on, and then he brought it back in and said, "Are you sure? Can I just show you what I had in mind?" And he was dating Christina Milian at the time. Him and Christina recorded like I guess like what would be known as like the pitch tape to Wild 'N Out. And he came back after we said no. He came back. He invested in himself. He knew and believed in his idea, even after he wasn't successful in connecting the idea to MTV and the executives. He still went back, invested in it, came back, and it was a huge success. And it's been a monolith for comedians. I mean, it's just launched so many comedian careers, male, female, of every genre. It's been really cool how comedy has been able to unify and unite talent across the same way music did originally at MTV. So it's pretty cool to get to work with artists, talent that just are so strong and steadfast in their vision, who are using TV or film or music as a communication tool, not as like an address. They don't want to be on TV. They need to be on TV to get this moving quickly. Don't catch me on TV, catch me on the move, but watch me on TV. And I sort of love that idea, that philosophy of creating content.
Well, Vinny, let me ask you this. One of my favorite movies, I'm currently in North Carolina. I live in North Carolina, but I'm originally from Philadelphia. And one of my favorite movies is Philadelphia with Denzel Washington and Tom Hanks. And in the movie, Denzel is an attorney who asks a witness a question and he says, "Explain it to me like I'm a 6-year-old." So I want you to explain it to me like I'm a 6-year-old. A person that says, "I have talent, I have ability," or as we mentioned earlier, "I have a story." Explain to me like I'm a 6-year-old. What is the first thing that we need to do? How important is it to have good content or material versus a great connection?
Oh, that's a great question, and some of it is a matter of how do you want to build your story. Some of it is a choice, to be honest. For me, I choose to have an idea, a concept, and then seek someone to collaborate with who I know this concept will help them achieve greatness. I'm just really I don't know. I feel like I'm really good when the people around me are really great, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm really, I feel like, strong at helping embolden people, whether I'm making you great at your, so you could be great at your skill in a successful way. You could be great at your skill in a terribly detrimental way where it's still just fun. I'm thinking the chicken tuna of the sea. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like some things you can be good at and they're fun to watch. Some things you can be really bad at and they're fun to watch. For me, talent development is about assessing a skill. Are you a natural speaker? Are you a strong thinker? Are you a community leader? Are you an organizer? Are you, you know, I think of the ways that I can try to empower you, and I come up with a creative medium that exemplifies it. So, for example, Mandy Moore is a great example. Mandy Moore had the ability to read off of a cue card and understood pop culture, but also didn't need to lean on the cue card to to finish the sentence. She had enough authority in herself to trust herself and not worry about the version of her that's on TV and all that stuff that rushes through your head as a 15-year-old, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
And she could discern the information and process it just as her. And then what we saw in that was, one, the opportunity to show people, you know, just a little bit of access to the female perspective of being an artist and coming into the industry. Also a younger one, because at that point most of MTV was rockers and artists that were over 20. So Mandy was a very young, fresh face there. But it was uniquely hers, and there was and we actually auditioned Jessica Simpson for that role too. But Jess, you know, reading a cue card is hard. I'll just put it that way. Reading a cue card, it's hard. It's hard to read words that are not yours and make them make sense.
Right.
And Jess really flourished in a format where she didn't have to worry about. She couldn't be compared to any. She finally couldn't be compared to any. They were no longer comparing her to Jessica or Christina or even Mandy anymore. She was now a newlyweds in her own little universe, which separated her and allowed people to see her for who she truly was. And I think that that's the thing that I try to do, is help try to find a way to help people be discovered for who they truly are. So when you say what are some of the first steps to think of when you're like creating your talent brand, I think you take an inventory. For me, for example, I, I'm laughing because I've really never said this out loud, but like I know that I do well on stage.
Okay.
I got personality, but like acting wasn't really. I like more comedy than acting. But I also know that I love making change. But in comedy, I felt like change. It's so tiny. It's so in a minute as a performer, not as a writer. As a writer, it could be there's so much more longevity. But as a performer in comedy, I feel like it's the laugh, and it's hard for that laugh to continue. And I had to find a way to wrap myself around talent and engage in story that I can actually help change, that I can help mold. And ultimately, unscripted reality TV was like I was built for that. I was built for helping people change their lives, and then airing it in a way that was exciting and interesting to share. And I think it all comes back to, like, you start with inventory. You take a look at what you have and what you don't have, who you need to have around you to get to where you want to be. And now we can be mindful of that. Who do I want to have next to me when I win my first Emmy, when I win my first Oscar, when I launch my first podcast? Who do I want to have? You know, we have options and choices now, and we have ownership over the property that we are creating in podcasting. Very different than social media, and very different than television. So it's actually probably the number one reason why I'm most passionate about podcasting, is the intellectual property that it creates, that you're able to register and trademark, and then the things you can do. I mean, I have a podcast is the name of my podcast. I have a podcast on TV is the name of my TV show. I have a podcast.com is the name of a podcast discovery platform where I search and identify independent podcasters and indie podcast news. So I'm really stretching that I have a podcast thing out, but it's mine and I own it and I love it. And everything else I've ever created, I had to sell to a network and they own. I still love it, but they own it. It's a very different vibe.
Right. Well, you mentioned something a moment ago, that a term that I want to talk about. You said something about developing our brand. What does that mean when you say developing a brand, and what does that look like?
So when I talk about talent brands and our personal brands, usually it's reputation more so than font and artwork and social assets. It's my brand is, for example, my brand is inspire, impact, ignite. Those, if you ask me how do I surmise what I like to do with my brand, why do people call me? They call me to inspire conversations, inspire creativity, to make impact on audiences, to make impact on programmatic launches, and to ignite conversations, to ignite culture, to ignite opportunities. Like those are the things that I'm strong at. Also, those are my SEO terms. So I've baked my SEO terms into my livelihood. I'm constantly thinking of those three words. I'm constantly using them in sentences naturally, and they're constantly coming up in my Google search, which is helping people find my brand.
Mm-hmm.
So to go back to reputation, I'm working on let's put it this way, I'm working on my reputation when I focus on working on categories that inspire and impact and ignite. I'm being mindful that I have this creative ability. I'm going to have a reputation because every action has a reaction. So if I'm going to be known for something, and trust me, I've been known as the guy who cast, The Hills and Laguna Beach and The Housewives. So I know what it's like to get lumped into something, to be known for something that you did that you didn't realize was going to be so monumental or so definitive. And you have the ability to make that change. And I know that because I did it with and for and by Ozzy Osbourne and his family and Jess and Ashton and a bazillion people on reality TV. And I'm doing it now on podcasting. And I did it for myself, where I'm finally in front of the camera, behind the mic, and in a position where I'm now leaving my voice in. I mean, it's so weird to say this as a casting director in television. I'm paid to have these very conversations and then remove my voice from the master. It's like a weird, I'm like trained the exact opposite intuitively of how to be a successful podcaster.
Well, Vinny, with podcasting as well as anything else, it's so many, you mentioned it's so much to choose from. And I guess my question again is going back to this, the connection, because we all realize it's power in connection. Now, that's a fancy way of saying what was said years ago. It's not what you know, but who you know. Do you think the reputation is important? It's almost like a catch-22. I have a concept for a podcast, or I have a concept for a blog or whatever. It really won't blow up because I'm not well known. Do I have to get well known before I do this, or do I do this to get well known?
Oh, it's a great question. And the answer is yes. The good news is there's no place to start because there's no place to end. Unfortunately, time is the thing that ends, right? Otherwise, the journey would sort of keep going. Herein, I would say, well, part of it is what do you want the journey to be? Part of it is what do you think is the most successful path for you? Success could be quickest route there, or it could be how could you develop the most amount of skill so that by the time the whole globe is watching you, you truly have mastered what you're set to do and have every millisecond down to the mindfulness and can really execute, on a really powerful level. To me, it's about connection and action. So I want to be mindful about saying, here's what I think. Exposure without action will lead to entertainment. So exposure, if I just want to be heard, be seen, and I'm talking and I'm keeping you here every week, every day, you're coming back. I'm not really asking you to do anything, but you enjoy coming back. I'm really entertaining you. And there's a spot for that. There's a place for entertainers in this world, by the way, for sure, 1,000%. Mostly on television. Hopefully podcasters are called to podcasting because they feel their voice is putting people into action as opposed to keeping them on those couches, because I already did that for 20 years. So and I think what's really cool about podcasting is like if you think of like I worked at MTV in the 90s when you didn't have to watch MTV to know what was on it. You heard it, you knew it was on TV because of what you've seen before. So you didn't need to be in the room to be watching MTV for MTV to be on in the house and everyone to have an awareness. I think podcasting can do the same thing. I think that podcasting has the ability So you have a presence in the living room where there's a shared audio experience. Or if I want to watch TV, I can, and I'll like it and I'll see what's on there, but also I could leave the room and it'll still make sense to me as well.
Right.
There's a real power in podcasting that we have that we just didn't have in television. And then when the brands realize the power that we have with our relationship with our audience, that a couple of hundred downloads per episode is probably a much more valuable relationship than a million likes on TikTok because you had one lucky video 3 months ago,
Right.
But I think that they say, I hate throwing numbers out there, but I read $17 billion towards the creator economy this year. A lot of that not going to TV anymore.
Right.
So you want to know why am I creeping on this side? Is clearly because where the money is, the change is, and where small business owners are, where us freelancers are, where us independent contractors, the moms and dads, the single parents, the working parents who are this is where change is going to come from. And podcasting gives us a voice. It gives us a right, an intellectual right to property that we create. And I really do think that in the future, there's going to be nothing more, even just looking at the rise of NFTs and what just happened with cryptocurrency, that having a brand and having a way to transact it's so important in the future. The creativity is just going to be mind blowing.
So how do you see the creativity evolving? What do taking a person, just using someone like myself here on the underground subway?
Yeah.
How do you grow? How does a person start a podcast and get those numbers up?
Yeah, it's about, so one, it's about audience building, and then it's about audience leveraging. Audience building is good old social media, getting in front of people, guesting, doing the work to get exposed and grow the audience. That's like an audience, that's like an artist coming out with an album, right? She's going to market it, she's going to have singles, she's going to do things that specifically market that album. Where the real genius happens is when that artist does a music festival where there are other artist audiences there, and those two audience have the ability to come together and build community. And that's where collaborating with other creators comes into play. So if growing your audience is important to you, there is, for me, I'm doing it right now. You're hearing it and seeing it in real life. Me being a guest on podcasts that are not in the top 100 is a very specific, direct initiative that I've taken on for two reasons. One, I have really good stories that are not on social media or podcasting yet. I don't want to get them to the top 100. They don't need them. It's number one. Right. Number two, I want to stand out with everybody. So right now, I stand out because of these stories. Next year, we'll all be in the top 100 together. We'll all have gone through this journey together, and being empowered by people who I've taken this journey with will ensure my longevity as a podcaster. And I know this for a fact because when I went to MTV, I didn't work with Tina Turner and Madonna and Janet Jackson. Well, Janet, part of Nipplegate, but we don't need to talk about that. But I worked with Mandy Moore and Ashton Kutcher, Jessica Simpson, some of the art, Jennifer Lopez, Ricky Martin, like artists that were just starting their career. Not Ricky, the artists that were just starting their career, and then grew into superstars. So if I can replicate what I did in TV here in podcasting, I would be the happiest man on earth, because I know I changed cable television by casting the people that I cast, who became producers and created longevity in a career that could have just been gig to gig. And if I can do that in TV, which is gated by public companies, I certainly know how to work human to human in a much easier capacity.
Well, how do we get in touch with you or get our hands on anything that you've done? If we wanted to reach?
I love that. Well, as you know, I like working with friends, so reach out and say hi to me. It's really where I like it to start first and foremost. I'm on LinkedIn all the time. You'll get a really quick reaction from me on LinkedIn at Vinnie Potestivo. I am at Vinnie Potestivo on all other social media, and then my website vpe.tv. And if you come to vpe.tv, you'll see I have a creator hub where I list all the awards I think you could be winning, about 50 influencer marketing platforms that you might not know about, and access to my digital toolkit, which is literally all the links to everything I know and use. I put them in one place so I can find them, and then I thought, well, if it's good enough for me, it's definitely going to be good enough for somebody else out there who doesn't even know how to use these. So I'm glad to make them available.
One final question, Vinny. Would you come back and we can do this again in the future?
Oh, yes. Yes. That is the easiest answer.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us, my friend, and look forward to it again in the future.
We'll do it soon.
All right. Thank you. Well, we're out of time, but we certainly want to thank Vinnie Potestivo for joining us. It was an amazing interview, and we gained so much from his wealth of knowledge and his expertise, and certainly I appreciate all of you that have joined us on this edition of the Underground Subway. I take it not for granted that you take time out of your schedule, just like Vinnie did, and I'm excited to be able to interview such a wonderful guest and develop a new friendship and relationship with him. Well, I hear the music playing, which means we're at the end of this edition of the Underground Subway. But my friends, we are pulling this train into the station of Success Boulevard and Purpose Avenue. And we want you to connect with Vinnie, and we want you to keep striving to be better, keep striving to do more, to increase your worth in life. Before you go to bed tonight, I want you to do me a favor. Find a mirror, look yourself in the eyes, ask yourself this question. Today, did I do something to work toward my purpose, or did I waste another day? No more time to waste. Thank you for joining the Underground Subway. I'm David Austin, your host. Thank you, Vinnie, for joining us. Everyone have a great day today and an even better day tomorrow.